Welcome, everyone. Today, I want to take you on a journey to the rugged coast of Maine, back in the year 1922. Picture this. A lonely lighthouse, perched on a jagged island of rock. The waves are a constant, crashing rhythm against the shore. The cries of gulls hang in the salty air. This is the world of Captain Jonas Hawley. At 58, Jonas is a widower, a man shaped by the sea quiet, stubborn, and fiercely loyal. His only companion on this isolated rock is Beacon, a black and white border collie with eyes as sharp as the coast is unforgiving. For years, they've been a team, a silent partnership against the vast, unpredictable ocean. Every single dawn, without fail, Captain Hawley would climb the spiraling steps of the tower to light the massive lamp. And every single dawn, Beacon was right there with him, his paws padding softly on the iron stairs, a four-legged shadow that never left his side. They'd lived alone on the island for what felt like an eternity, weathering brutal storms and an even deeper silence. The bond between them was something more than just a man and his pet. It was a pact. When the notorious Maine fog rolled in, thick and blinding, Beacon would let out three sharp, distinct barks. It was their signal. Jonas's cue to double-check the light, to ensure its beam cut through the haze. Jonas would often ruffle the dog's fur, a rare smile touching his weathered face, and mutter, "Best partner I ever had." Beacon, in return, would just lean into his touch, his duty understood. That routine, steady as the tides, was interrupted one summer by the arrival of a familiar boat. It was Alan Jonas's daughter, a kind-hearted schoolteacher from the mainland. She was 22, full of life, and she always brought with her a touch of the world beyond the island: freshly baked bread, newspapers, and this time, a letter. As they sat by the small, crackling fire in the keeper's quarters, she broke the news gently. "The Lighthouse board," she began, her voice soft. "They're installing an electric light next spring." Jonas's face hardened. He looked out the small window towards the sea, his jaw set. "A machine can't keep sailors safe like a man can," he grumbled, his voice low and firm. At his feet, Beacon let out a soft bark, a quiet affirmation, as if he, too, understood the threat of being replaced. Ellen smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Maybe it's time you came home, Father. To the mainland, with me." He just shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "This light is home." That night, the foghorn moaned its lonely song across the water. The sound was a constant in Jonas's life, a mournful lullaby. Ellen watched him, her heart aching a little. She saw the way his calloused hand gently stroked Beacon's fur, the way he leaned down and whispered, so low she almost didn't hear it, "As long as that dog breathes, no ship will hit these rocks." It wasn't just a promise. It was a sacred vow, a testament to the trust he placed not just in his lamp, but in his loyal companion. Weeks later, Ellen's visit came to an end. She boarded the supply boat, captained by Jonas's old friend, Mr. Pike, promising to return in August. But August didn't bring a happy reunion. It brought the storm. A monster of a storm, the kind old sailors tell stories about for decades. The wind didn't just howl, it screamed. The sea, usually a predictable neighbor, rose up like a monstrous, gray wall, threatening to swallow the tiny island whole. Jonas knew what he had to do. He rushed from his chair, shouting over the gale, and began to climb up the spiral staircase to check the lantern. As always, Beacon was right there, a blur of black and white at his heels, unafraid. Just as they reached the top, a blinding flash of lightning split the sky. A deafening crack followed the bolt had struck the tower itself. The sound of shattering glass was lost in the thunder, but the effect was immediate and terrifying. The light, their beacon of hope, went out. Darkness flooded the lantern room. Frantically, Jonas tried to relight it, his hands shaking in the cold. But it was no use. Water was already pouring in, flooding the fuel room below. He shouted over the wind, his voice raw. "We'll have to send the signal." "Boy!" They scrambled out onto the narrow balcony, the wind and rain tearing at them. Jonas managed to light a distress flare, its red glow a desperate plea against the black chaos. He waved it wildly, and then he saw it. Through the sheets of rain, A fishing boat, its lights flickering, caught in the violent current and heading straight for the treacherous, hidden rocks. As Jonas waved the flare, a gust of wind ripped it from his hand, extinguishing it in the sea. It was over. All was lost. But Beacon had been watching. He'd seen Jonas perform this ritual 100 times, albeit with a lantern, not a flare. In that moment of pure desperation, the dog did the only thing he knew how to do. He saw a piece of burning rag from the flare's ignition still smoldering on the deck. He grabbed it in his mouth and, without a second's hesitation, bolted down the stairs and out into the storm. Beacon. No. Jonas screamed, his voice swallowed by the wind. From the deck of the fishing boat, the terrified crew later told the story. They were lost blind, moments from being smashed to pieces. Then they saw it. A strange, otherworldly light, bouncing and weaving along the edge of the rocks. It was small. It was moving. It was alive. It wasn't a lighthouse beam, but it was enough. Following that bobbing light, they steered the boat, inch by inch, away from the deadly reef and into the relative safety of open water. When the storm finally broke and rescue boats reached the island, the scene was one of devastation. They found Captain Jonas Halley unconscious near the base of the tower, the tide lapping at his boots. He awoke to the familiar, gruff voice of Mr. Pike. "You're a lucky man, old friend. They found you by the beacon." Jonas, dazed and confused, blinked. "The light's out," he mumbled. Mr. Pike's smile was full of sorrow. He placed a hand on Jonas's shoulder. "Not that beacon, Jonas. Your beacon." They found him near the base of the cliff. The brave collie lay still, his fur burned and soaked through by the storm. But even in death, his loyalty shone. His body was curled protectively around the last emergency flare from the kit, its faint glow shielded from the rain, a final, fading ember of his heroic act. Jonas fell to his knees beside his friend, his partner. He reached out a trembling hand, and his voice was a broken whisper, choked with grief and gratitude. "You kept them safe. You kept them safe, boy." A month later, Ellen returned to a changed island. The lighthouse had been rebuilt, and just as the board had promised, it now housed a powerful electric light, stronger, brighter, and unblinking. A machine. But Jonas insisted that one thing remained the same. At the base of the gleaming new tower, he commissioned a simple bronze plaque. Its words were etched for all to see, in memory of Beacon the dog who guarded the light. Every evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Jonas would climb the stairs. A habit ingrained in his very soul. He'd stand on the balcony and look out at the sea, the new electric beam sweeping across the water behind him. Sometimes, when the fog rolled in, thick and silent, he would stand there for hours. And in those quiet moments, he swore he could still hear Ithri's soft, distant barks, echoing faintly on the wind. Years pass. When Jonas finally passed away, Ellen brought his ashes back to the island, his one true home. She scattered them in the salty air, right beside the bronze plaque honoring his faithful companion. She whispered to the wind, "Now you can keep the light together." And as the sun set over the waves that evening, the new, powerful lighthouse beam began its nightly turn. For just a brief, magical moment, as the light swept past, it seemed to split in two, as if there were two lights shining side by side, a keeper and his partner, watching over the sea for all eternity. This story reminds us that true loyalty never really dies. Sometimes, it burns brighter and warmer than any lamp ever could. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If this story touched your heart, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more tales from the past. We'll see you next time.